Hello, hello. Today is the 24th of March, but in the Chinese calendar, it is day 6 of Moon 2. I'm just going to double check that. Yes, day 6 of Moon 2. So today's subject and tomorrow's subject are kind of co-aligned, so I'm going to try and not overlap them. And again, keep this to under 10 minutes. So my name's Ollie, this is Red Sun Horizons. I'm an Eastern Physiotherapies practitioner from the south of England, that's Portsmouth, Southsea, UK. So a lot of what I practice is all Taoist origin and Taoist integrated and aligned. So this is a day-to-day look at the Chinese calendar and things that would typically happen in Taoist tradition and some other Chinese tradition through those things. So today is day 6 of Moon 2. So Moon 2 is the apricot moon, and we are now on day 6 of the apricot moon. Okay, so there are often tributes or acknowledged birthdays of certain deities on each day. Some days don't have any, obviously. Today is the birthday of the great god of the Eastern Peak. So there are 5 mountains in this sense. So northeast, southwest, and central. The central one is called the Lofty Mountain, which translation is the Lofty Mountain, referring to its height. The North Mountain is called the Permanent Mountain. The East Mountain is called the Tranquil Mountain. That's the one we're talking about today, or is the reference for today. And then the West is the Splendid Mountain. And then the one in between, down south, is the Balanced Mountain. So I'm going to read straight through. So just to reiterate, obviously always using as a guide or as a prompt the Lunar Tao by Deng Ming Dao. I'll take a few excerpts from here and then add some bits either that's from my own experience or from any of my wheelhouses, trying to give people some tools and tips and things they can use for looking after and their own health, etc. Mental, physical, spiritual, etc. And then I often read something from the Tao Te Ching at the end, and I have one of those lined up. Okay, so the title for today, Day 6 Moon 2, is Sacred Mountains. So it is the birthday of the great god of the Eastern Peak. So the 5 sacred mountains in China are believed to have been formed by the body of Pan Gu. So there will be something about Pangu later on. But, okay, so specifically the great god of the Eastern Peak, who was Dongyue Dade, exorcises evil spirits and receives the souls of the dead, which float to Taishan. He determines people's fortunes, the success of officials, and the length of lives. He also administers the 18 levels of hell. There you go. So, god of the Tranquil Mountain administers the 18 levels of hell. There you go. So, yes, so this kind of goes into pilgrimage, but pilgrimage is a little bit more about tomorrow's. So there is a poem that constantly follows through these. Make pilgrimage to your sacred mountain. Find the vantage closest to your heaven. Okay, so, and there is a thing about, obviously, Taoists, much like a lot of people who find spiritualism or find some level towards enlightenment, etc., the ones that have the money to kind of retreat into more sort of recluse areas. They tend to pull away from the one of my first spiritual teachers that I followed was David Hawkins, and he was very much one of those people. He was an MD, PhD, one of the top psychotherapists working in New York, highly paid, highly respected, all that kind of stuff. But then had this whole awakening thing and eventually ended up moving out to live in the middle of nowhere, but would still teach lectures and all that kind of stuff, and write numerous books. Okay, so each of the 5 sacred mountains is a center of history, spirituality, art, and poetry. Pilgrimages to sacred mountains are highly valued as inspiring, reverent, and beneficial journeys. Pilgrims believe that they can absorb the power of the mountain and divine power from them. The makers of the lunar calendar, i.e. the Chinese calendar, The makers of the lunar calendar wanted to encompass the entirety of human existence by preserving observation days for each sacred mountain. The lunar calendar incorporates both time and place. Okay. In the past, people ascended mountains to be closer to heaven and as far from the corrupt human world as possible. Same thing. So some Taoists believe the eastern peak was the actual home to gods, therefore it was heaven. Others believe souls flew to the eastern peak upon death, which placed paradise on the mountain. All the examples show mountains as symbols of greatness and places for spiritual cultivation. Okay, and each of the 5 sacred mountains inside us. So there we go. I'll read that in a sec. So yes, the Wudan mountain is probably the most famous for. Wudan is obviously also the collection of Tai Chi, Xing Yi, and Bagua. So the 3 internal arts of Wudan, also known as Wutang. So Wudan Mountain. Generally nowadays it's more Wudan, and that is a lot of that's more specifically Mandarin rather than Cantonese or any of the other sort of languages that are still spoken in China but not very prolifically in that sense. They might be a local language, but nowadays everyone learns Mandarin. You'll find in Guangdong, Canton, etc., and all the areas down south like Yunnan, etc., and that kind of thing. And they will probably speak Cantonese because they will learn it from their parents and their lineage and through osmosis. But their education would absolutely be in Mandarin, Hanyu, the language of the Han, from the Han Empire up the north. So anywhere up north, like Beijing, north capital, Tiananmen, Guangzhou, all that kind of stuff is all up north, and that would generally be as standard. They would learn it from their parents, Mandarin. Okay, so yes, Wudan Mountain. So all up that mountain and going higher and higher and all that kind of stuff. It was actually referenced in the remake of the Karate Kid film with Jackie Chan. Okay, so some Taoists believe that the eastern peak. I've read that bit. So there we go. So each of us have 5 sacred mountains inside us. Ascend them, and you are closer to your heaven. Be a person on a mountain, and you are on your way to becoming an immortal. Yeah, be a person on a mountain, and you are on your way to becoming an immortal. So it's about taking recluse within, that kind of thing. So the way forward is within. That's not my phrase. That's something I think I adopted from Ralph Smart, Infinite Waters, that kind of thing. Used to watch a lot of his stuff. Yes, so the way forward is within. It's probably come from somewhere else as well, and the whole, as above, as below, so above, as within, so without, that kind of stuff. But the way forward is within. So starting to remove yourself, especially from mainstream TV and all that kind of stuff, because most of it's just propaganda and fear-based. It's fear porn. It's there to kind of keep you in a lower vibration and to keep you in states of fear so that you don't improve yourself and work on yourself. The concept of reincarnation is you keep reincarnation until you've transcended everything or worked on everything, gained everything that you can gain from this human form, and then you go on to the next. If you never do that, you keep reincarnating onto the human plane and you are stuck in the earthly plane. All the dogma and the stuff that is integrated with paganism, effectively, when you look at the if you ever see the icon for which most people call Satan itself, it's not that. It is it's an icon where you see like someone sat cross-legged with a goat's head and wings, and then this flame above the thing, all that kind of stuff. That is not Satan. That's an old paganistic symbol for. I'm trying to remember the name of it now, but yeah, it's representing. So the goat's head represented earth, the wings represented air, the fire represented ether, all of this kind of stuff. it was a pictorial representation of the 5 elements of earth, wind, fire, water and ether. The Baphomet is what it's called. Nowadays, religion turned the word Baphomet into meaning Baphomet was a specific demon, and then that picture of the Baphomet was actually a representation of Satan, because he was the fallen angel who then turned, which is absolute fiction. The Baphomet is a representation of that. When you look at the pentagram should be the point at the top. They've inverted the pentagram so that the point is at the bottom. So, and it's all about, that is more the darker side of those kind of energies when people work with that kind of stuff. But again, that's coming again more from sort of pagan sort of things. And ultimately, you will see instead of the pentagram being this way, it's now drawn like this way. They go top to bottom and go that way. And then merged into that is the goat head. And the goat head is the representation of Earth. So the actual real society of the Church of Satan and all that kind of stuff use that symbolism because it is about only being concerned with Earth energies. They want people to keep reincarnating on Earth and never ascend or transcend, because this is where they've got control. This is where they can implement control. And the fundamental belief or the tenet for the Church of Satan is that everything, they don't aspire to anything else beyond earthly things. They like being able to take what they want and everything else in this earthly realm. And that is what it's about. So realistically, it's far more to do with paganism than it has anything to do with Christianity, which is from a completely different country, halfway around the world. So anyway, we've gone past that 10-minute mark, so I'm just going to read the last bit, which is from the Tao Te Ching. It doesn't have a huge relevance to today's subject, but it is one I haven't read yet, and the relevance is more to do with the going within, so looking into that void, looking into that emptiness, darkness, etc. So, we join spokes together in a wheel, but it is the centre hole that makes the wagon move. We shape clay into a pot, but it is the emptiness inside that holds whatever we want. We hammer wood for a house, but it is the inner space that makes it livable. We work with being, but non-being is what we use. Okay, that is everything for today. Tomorrow is a kind of extension of, and it's all about pilgrimage and again, and continuing on with the 5 sacred mountains and some other bits. That's everything for today. I will see you tomorrow.